Happy moment to everyone. This is Perkish Salomina, Assistant Professor, Department of Social Work, St.Joseph College of Arts and Science, Autonomous Cuddalore. So in this video, we are going to discuss about industrial disputes under the subject of industrial relations. Let us get into the slide. Let us look into the meaning of industrial dispute. This meaning of industrial dispute is given by the Industrial Dispute Act 1947 under section 2K. Let me read this meaning first. Industrial dispute means any dispute or difference between employers and employers, or between employers and workmen, or between workman and workman, in which connected with the employment or non-employment or terms of employment, or with the condition of labor of any person. Yes, let me explain this meaning of industrial dispute. When we heard the word dispute, it means a kind of conflict. Let me tell you, conflict between whom is being derived here. A conflict or dispute or difference between employer. When we are talking about the hierarchy of the organization, first we goes with the employer. Between the employer, they may have some kind of dispute. That also comes under industrial disputes. Employer in the sense, for example, if we have any kind of manager category or supervisor category, they will be comes under the employer. They will be if they have some kind of dispute among themselves, between two managers, between two employers, or between manager and supervisor. So these comes under the conflicts between employer and employers. The other category, employers and workmen, or we can say it as employee. Employee and workman is the same term which is used. Here we can have a conflict or dispute between employers and employee. For example, we can have a conflict between manager and the worker who is working under the manager category. Or we can have the dispute between workman and workman, which means between the employee with the same category of the workers. The next thing, these kind of dispute among these three groups, when we are talking about dispute or relationship, these falls under these three groups. These three groups are between employers, between employees, and between employer and employee. These three groups is given more important, or these three groups are considered much in their activity of dispute or relationship. This dispute can arise based on the employment or non-employment, in terms of employment, or in the condition of labor of any person. The dispute can arise kind of working condition or kind of payment, or any kind of issues arise within the organization or outside of the organization. The thing is, we have to understand about the dispute between the employees, between the employers, and between employer and employee. For the reason may be anything based on their job, or it may be personal of their conflict. We move on to the next slide. This slide shows you the different types of industrial disputes. There are four types of industrial disputes. First one, interest dispute. Second, grievance dispute. Third, unfair labor practices dispute. Fourth, recognition dispute. Let me explain one by one. First, we look into interest dispute. We can call it as interest dispute or economic dispute. These kind of dispute occur mostly based on the demand of the employee. It can be kind of wage or benefit which lacks to the employee in the organization. For example, we can say that if the organization is delayed to pay their wage or salary, they may occur with some kind of dispute. They may go with the strikes or lockout or somewhat. Strikes and lockouts are the a kind of measurement they take to show their dispute activities. Yes. The next thing, this kind of interest dispute must be properly negotiated or bargained or compromised. If an interest dispute occur within the employee, the employer should take a proper notice and we have to negotiate them about the condition and we have to make them compromise about the situation. If we failed to do this, we will be in a kind of relationship break. We will be facing some kind of a problem between the employer and the employee. These things should be sought out in a very well planned manner. This dispute should be settled through conciliation. So under section 12 of Industrial Dispute Act, each organization should have a conciliation officer. The conciliation officer will undergo all the disputes faced by the employees in an organization. The conciliation officer will take over all the kind of disputes which is faced by the employee in an organization. It's a kind of any kind of dispute can arise to the employee and all the kind of dispute is faced by the conciliation officer, kind of settlement and kind of compromising, bargaining, these works and all done by the conciliation officer. According to section 12 Industrial Dispute Act, each industry should have their conciliation officer to handle all these kind of problems. The next problem or next dispute is grievance or rights dispute, or it can be called as legal disputes. These disputes mainly focusing on the protest by the worker against their management, which means the worker file a complaint against the employer or against the management. So this kind of dispute is called as grievance or rights dispute. In order to get their rights, the employee will file these kind of disputes against the management. This kind of grievance dispute arise out of payment of wages, fringe benefits, working hours, overtime, promotions, demotions, seniority, safety and health related aspect. Grievance aspect can take any form of these disputes. For example, we can have a overtime and we may fail to pay for the overtime. So these kind of activities, and especially in the promotions, we have to be very careful. If we are going with the proper procedure or with the proper rules and regulation which is signed by the employee, there won't be any kind of problem. So if we are going by the abide by laws, we can settle these kind of grievance problem in a very effective manner. If we failed to make such a policies or such a rules and regulation, then it will be very difficult to face these kind of disputes among the employees, especially when we talk about the promotions and the seniority, a kind of health related aspect. It is very important to file a policy or to make a policy in a very effective manner, in a clear sense. Especially we are talking about the promotion, we should give the rules, okay, after the 2 years or after how many years they can get promoted or they can get higher salary. So all these rules and regulation and all should be informed to the employee earlier. it will reduce the kind of conflict. If you informed earlier to the employee, these kind of problems can be reduced or it can be avoided. And if grievance disputes are not sorted out in accordance with the procedure that is accepted by the parties, and often result in disturbing the working relationship. If we failed to address these grievance dispute, it result in disturbing the working relationship between the management and employees. If we failed to address this kind of dispute, it will result in mistrust of employee towards the organization or management. In order to bring the trust towards employee, we have to handle this situation in a very effective manner. If we are failed to handle in a very effective manner, employee will have negative opinion about the management and the system. Then here, when we are talking about grievance, the government also suggests and encourage the voluntary arbitration for this type of dispute settlement. The word arbitration is very important term used here. Arbitration in the sense the third party will get involved in settling your dispute. If you have a dispute between the employer and employee, the other third party will come and resolve your dispute. It can be any kind of officials based on their designations, like we can have court or labor court. We can have these kind of source to come out of these grievance dispute. The next, unfair practices dispute. Unfair practices means any common problem which occur based on any kind of discrimination against workers. Here unfair in the sense a kind of discrimination. This discrimination can be based on gender or based on experience or based on year or based on age. Okay, the discrimination against worker based on race and caste. These discrimination comes under unfair practices. The unfair practices includes the pressure on employees also. If we have a working hour of 8 hours, we should stick on with the timing. If we are allowing them to work more than 8 hours, we should have a proper information and we should give a proper payment to that particular employees, or these kind of problem will occur in an organization. And these unfair practices will arise based on their duty or role also. If they failed to do the particular activity, or if they failed to do in their particular role, they will be caught. And in order to overcome these kind of problem, we have to give a proper job description. We have to give a proper notice to the employee about their working conditions and the organization expectation. And here, when we are talking about unfair in the sense, we are going against with the justice, like if they are doing for any kind of strike or any kind of activity, suddenly we will be quitting that particular employee and we will be recruiting other new employees for the same place. If we do like this, these kind of activities comes under unfair practices towards the employee. Here also we can have a kind of conciliation or conciliation officer to overcome these kind of unfair practices and disputes. The last kind of dispute is recognition dispute. Here this kind of dispute comes under the labor union and the dispute between management and the labor union. Let me brief this type. Recognition dispute arises when the management of an organization refuses to recognize a trade union. As I already told you, if a particular management is refused to recognize a trade union, then this kind of dispute arises. Why we are refusing to recognize a particular trade union? There might be a reason to refuse, or we should accept the trade union with their needs and the commitments. Next, when the management dislikes a particular union, it refuses to accept the trade union for the purpose of negotiation. For example, if a situation comes for the negotiation, purposefully the management will refuse to go for the negotiation. If negotiation occur, definitely a result will move to the employee side. So better we quit negotiation. So in that sense, most of the organization or employee, they will quit the negotiation process in order to face their development. In order to focus on their own development, they will be refusing this negotiation purposefully. And next, in this also, when there is already an existing trade union or it is a case of multiple trade unions, this trade union can be refused because already a trade union can exist in the same industry or organization. For refusing the trade union, this must be a stronger reason, which means multiple trade unions of the organization. And if the particular trade union do not have a proper leadership, it can also be refused to have a kind of negotiation or kind of sufficient practices within the organization. These kind of negotiation disputes can be settled through the guideline given by the government for recognition of trade union, or with the help of code of discipline which has been voluntarily laid down by the government. If you go through the Industrial Dispute Act and the Trade Union Act and the code of discipline, they have briefly said about the measurement and precautions to overcome these kind of problems in a well explained manner. So in next class we will be briefly discussing about all these code of disciplines and voluntary measurement which is given by the organization towards the industrial disputes settlement. Thank you.